In a minute, I'll show you why most writers are getting genre wrong, and how blending genres the right way can change everything for the story you're trying to tell. Because you need to imagine your story is a living organism, and genres are its DNA, not just the surface features, but the internal code, determining how the story grows, moves, and feels. And if you're blending genres without understanding how that internal code is supposed to function, then you're probably writing something, building a story that might look right, but doesn't really come to life. So how do you write your story's genre without relying too heavily on tropes? And how does the best genre blending actually work? How do you choose the right mix to tell your story in a way that connects with your reader or audience and hits with the impact you want? The fact is, if you don't understand what each genre's core concern and philosophical focus is, you can't. So in this video, I'm going to break down what each genre is really about at a philosophical level, what the focus of each genre is, and I'll reveal some powerful combinations to help you, as well as traps to avoid, so that ultimately you can deliver the type of story experience you've been intending from the start. And to start, we need to understand the real function your genres have to serve. Most people think genre is about the external elements that first come to mind, things like monsters, the kisses in romance, space battles in sci-fi, but really that's just the packaging. If you're treating genre like window dressing, you're missing the fact that it's an engine that controls tone, tension, pacing, even character arcs, and the real function of a genre is emotional, and even deeper than that, it is philosophical. And since a story's theme is what the story is really about, the packaging, the genre, has to help deliver on that theme and that overall story experience. Because each genre exists to ask specific questions and to give us a specific emotional experience in how it explores its response. And that's why choosing the right genre isn't just about style, it's about meaning, the foundation for how your story will resonate with others. Horror explores survival and fear. Romance dives into intimacy and trust. Mystery is about truth and revelation. When a story sticks with us, it's because its genre is working beneath the surface to help shape what the reader and audience feel, not just what they're reading or seeing. In Seven's grim marriage of horror's moral depravity and crime's mystery revelation drive, solving the crime forces emotional and ethical reckonings for the characters, as the writer answers the philosophical question at the core of the crime mystery genre. In his story's climactic conclusion, truth costs everything. So this goes deeper than most writers realize. You're not just choosing a vibe and that set dressing, you're choosing the psychological pressure cooker that your story has to live inside to emulate and reflect the currents and concerns that flow through real life. A recent client of mine was writing a deeply researched piece set in 1930s Britain, a social realism story with a family struggling to survive. And it had authentic historical detail, but the thematic idea that they were steering by when they came to me was around the imposition of reality on people's dreams. And because that's an abstract feeling, while a theme, it just didn't give a strong enough structural spine that aligned with their genre's demands in a way that also helped them to orient the plot beats around something that was immediate, tangible, and engaging. Once I reframed their thematic core to match social realism's philosophical concern as the vehicle to explore it, which, by the way, is how to preserve dignity and survive within systemic hardship, suddenly the story's important beats and structural pillars became obvious. Moments that threaten survival, small victories against the system, and the moral compromises along the way. Those are the things that we needed to emulate. So what the story's actually about became clearer, and though the genre itself hadn't changed, knowing that genre's core philosophy allowed the heart of their story to come into sharper focus, giving them a roadmap for writing it more effectively too, and much faster. So to start effectively blending, we need to understand the philosophies that each genre embodies and the foundational worldview it expresses in doing so, the focal concern it uses to dramatize its worldview throughout a narrative. Horror's core philosophy explores how we confront death and mortality, with a need to face the ghosts of our past, and that's often to restore some kind of moral or spiritual order. So its focal concern is with life and death, salvation and damnation. Action is all about what it takes to succeed against the odds. Philosophically, it's exploring what it means and takes to triumph, and ultimately promotes that success comes from taking action. Crime's philosophy is about how justice should be defined and delivered. So its fundamental concern is with the relationship between moral truth and social order. And within the crime genre, we have two prominent subgenres. Gangster stories are philosophically exploring how ambition and power corrupt. So its fundamental concern is with the cost of power when that power is built on moral compromise. Detective and mystery stories are exploring how we seek and interpret truth and the cost of knowing. So they're concerned with the relationship between truth and moral paradigms. Although the thriller is a combination of action, horror, and crime, thriller's underlying philosophy also includes looking for truth in spite of the danger, mixed in with how we survive that threat when it becomes personal. And the thriller's focal concern is the cost of survival. Myth stories are about how we discover our true selves and our place in the cosmos, focusing on transformation and, importantly, legacy. The core philosophy myths promote is that we can achieve a kind of immortality by fulfilling our destiny in life. Memoir and coming-of-age stories are subtly different, but both focus on how identity is forged through lived experience and that we must examine our life to create our true self. Science fiction is philosophically occupied with how we should examine our relationship with existence and our assumptions to help ensure a better future. So its main concern is with our relationship to existence and our paradigms of thought. Comedy is about how human folly disrupts social harmony and how reconciliation is achieved. And that's why we see comedies typically focusing on the clash between individual desires before ultimately finding collective harmony. The Western is fun because it doesn't just mean the Dust Bowl or John Wayne, it's a genre blend in its own right, because at its philosophical and thematic core, it's concerned with how societies balance freedom and order at a frontier and the cost of progress. And that's why we often have science fiction space operas adopting the Western genre, because space is of course a constant frontier. The philosophical concern in Western stories is examining the moral code of individuals in the absence or weakness of law. Fantasy is typically exploring the idea that we have more power over our lives and the world than we initially think. And by taking responsibility for our inherent gifts, we can help shape the lives and world for better or worse. The broad genre of love story is exploring how to master the moral act of loving another, and it does that by concerning itself with the balance between self-love and love for somebody else. However, as we'll get into in the love and romance genre deep dive video, there are different types of love subgenres, and some, like the obsession romance, can get pretty dark. Finally, we have social realism, which, as I touched on earlier, is concerned with how to preserve dignity and agency in the face of systemic or social hardship, the relationship between personal resilience and the social environment. And this is something that often finds its way into most genres because, of course, the reality of social life is part of the human condition. The reality is that the stories that really punch through are rarely one genre, and most blend more than two. Once you've made your genre offer clear, the next step is making that blend work, not just technically, but emotionally and, importantly, thematically. And this is only going to work when the genres you choose are made to pull in the same direction, not just in tone or pacing, but with that deeper philosophical meaning and the questions those genres raise and the emotional experiences they use to deliver it. So we could take mystery and thriller like we just covered in Seven, because horror is always present in a thriller's DNA. Both mystery and thriller lean into fear and unknown. Mystery asks, what happened? While a thriller horror's DNA asks, how do we survive finding out? So together, they heighten tension and build dread, while philosophically exploring together the need to reveal truth while surviving the personal cost of doing so. The Matrix blends sci-fi with the coming-of-age genre. Sci-fi gives us the architecture, the unique element, rules of the world, and a central what if, while coming of age gives us Neo's inner journey, and the two genres don't compete, they are used to inform each other around the central theme of fate versus free will, as Neo's character journey and this blend asks what is real and who am I within that reality. Pan's Labyrinth is a dark melding of the fantasy genre's quest archetype and social realism, where magical trials mirror the protagonist's emotional and political stakes in post-Civil War Spain. In Stranger Things, we are blending horror, sci-fi and coming of age seamlessly because they're all used to explore the same thing through a prism of fear. The fear of loss, of growing up, and the invisible forces inside and out that threaten our connections, with Eleven's need in the horror genre to also face the ghosts of her past. The more genres that you use, the more intentional you're going to have to be. And the trap is that if your story promises one genre but secretly delivers another, your reader probably won't feel happily surprised, they'll just feel confused and maybe betrayed. If your story starts like a thriller but ends like a romance, they might even just switch off because they feel like you've misled them. And that's why genre clarity matters in terms of the experience that that genre is offering and your execution of its telling. And I'll give you a personal example. Many years ago, I was writing a fantasy action mystery thriller about a broken family, and in my early draft, I thought I'd try bending the rules in a bid to be clever and deliver something unique. The thematic core and the structural beats were solid, but I didn't honor the fantasy DNA properly in the story's setup, the primary genre that was framing the story overall. I held back on establishing the magic in that associated character's introduction early in Act 1 because I wanted the protagonist to be like us, an everyman pulled into a crime mystery plot who gradually discovered that the world was magical. In theory, this sounds simple and hopefully pretty cool, but in practice my execution broke my contract with my readers about the particular type of story experience that I was offering them. Because by delaying the fantasy elements too long, I created the feeling that the magic came out of nowhere when it showed up, so rather than being a cool revelation, it undermined the expectations I'd set up about the kind of story they were in, which they'd all just assumed was crime. So this comes down to what character introductions, setups, and payoffs need to do, and if you want more on that, you can watch my videos on story openings and what your first pages and first chapters and opening scenes should include, because instead of making something unique with my genre blend, I'd just muddied the water. I hadn't delivered on my story's promise. My agent and all but one of my test readers were confused about what kind of story they were in, again, because that fundamental offer wasn't clear and the genres weren't effectively blended, so the investment just dropped off. Readers might not have that vocabulary to explain what's going wrong, but they are going to feel it. So blending genres effectively isn't about being forced to complicate your story more, but it is about delivering more meaning, more texture, and more momentum by letting each genre help you to emulate and explore your core theme more effectively, and by blending, using each genre's core philosophies and focal concerns, and the key events and elements that each one should contain, which we're unpacking in the following deep dive videos, you're going to be able to see and understand how to easily deliver a more powerful story experience that will live in readers' minds long after the final page. So you now understand what your audience is going to intuitively expect from each genre in terms of the core ideas those genres grapple with, and what fans of each genre will know is missing if those ingredients aren't there in some way. But to really make sure your desired story experience is being delivered in full, you need to understand how to make the most effective use of your choice of setting. So click here to learn exactly how to do that, and click here to watch the full Arc Mastery Blueprint course.